Imagine you pull a single penny from an old jar of change, look at the date, and realize it's from 1982. You might toss it into a cash drawer and never give it a second thought. After all, it's just a penny worth 1 cent in everyday transactions. But what if a tiny detail on that coin, something almost invisible to the casual observer, could make it worth hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of dollars? What if the slightest variation in date, size, or metal composition turns an otherwise ordinary coin into a rare and highly sought collectible? That is the extraordinary story of the 1982 Lincoln 1 cent, a coin that began with a face value of 1 cent but in certain forms can be worth far more because of errors, mint anomalies, rare transitional pieces, and collector demand. The Lincoln cent is one of the longest-running and most familiar coins in United States history. First issued in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth, the Lincoln penny has quietly passed through countless hands, paid for candy, transit fare, meals, and everyday purchases, and become part of everyday monetary life. By 1982, the Lincoln penny had been in continuous production for more than 7 decades, and many millions of these coins were struck each year. But 1982 stands out among all those years because it marked a major change in how pennies were made, a shift that created multiple coin varieties and rare error coins that collectors still hunt for today. In early 1982, the United States Mint was producing pennies using the traditional bronze composition that the series had used for decades, 95% copper and 5% zinc, yielding coins weighing approximately 3.11 grams. However, the price of copper was rising, and producing pennies in mostly copper became economically unsustainable. Midway through 1982, the Mint began switching to a new composition, a zinc core with a thin copper plating, resulting in lighter pennies weighing about 2.5 grams. Because this change happened during the year, both types of pennies, the old bronze composition and the new copper-plated zinc type, were struck and released into circulation, often in overlapping batches. This alone created 2 major groups of 1982 pennies, but what made the year remarkably complex was that both compositions were struck with 2 different date styles, large date and small date, and at multiple mints, leading to at least 8 distinct varieties of the 1982 penny. The date style difference refers to subtle variations in the size and shape of the numerals in 1982 on the coin's obverse. One style has bold, larger numerals with specific spacing and thickness, while the other, small date, has thinner, more delicate numerals that sit slightly differently on the planchet. These variations can be difficult to detect without comparison or magnification, but collectors use them to separate and categorize the different 1982 types. The mint mark, a tiny letter below the date, indicates where the coin was struck. In 1982, pennies were minted at Philadelphia, no mint mark, and Denver with a D mint mark. The San Francisco facility produced a limited number of proof pennies for collectors, marked with an S and struck on specially prepared planchets. These proof coins are part of the 1982 story, but the overwhelming majority of pennies entered circulation through Philadelphia and Denver production. In everyday circulation, most 1982 pennies, regardless of mint or date style, are still worth very little beyond their face value of 1 cent. Ordinary worn examples found in pocket change, vending machines, or cash registers remain at or near their denomination when used for purchases. Even among collectors, common circulated 1982 pennies with no unusual attributes typically trade for just a few cents to a few dollars because of their vast survival rate. Well over 10 billion were produced overall across all varieties. When people think of valuable old coins, they often imagine rare 19th century issues or dramatic mint errors from earlier decades. And while some classic Lincoln pennies such as the 1909 SVDB or the 1955 double die are dramatically valuable, the 1982 era presents a unique case where normal pennies can sometimes be much more than pocket change because of transitional varieties and errors produced during a period of intentional change at the mint. Most common 1982 pennies from Philadelphia and Denver, whether bronze or zinc composition, large date or small date, remain effectively worth their face value in everyday circulation. Collectors storing uncirculated examples in coin folders or rolls might see small premiums above face, but for everyday collectors the vast majority of these common types are not considered rare. Condition matters too. A crisp, uncirculated 1982 penny can be worth more than a worn one, and if it retains its original color or lively surfaces it may attract modest interest, sometimes a few dollars or more in high states of preservation. What truly drives value in the 1982 series, however, are the rarer transitional pieces and minting errors, and particularly one legendary and exceptionally rare variety, the 1982 small date penny struck on bronze copper planchet. In theory, pennies with the Denver Mint small date style were supposed to be zinc-based, just like most other Denver 1982 pennies. But through a quirk of production, a small handful, possibly only a few, were struck on the older bronze planchets meant for early 1982 production. These coins should not have existed based on production intent, and because they are so unexpected and rare, they are among the most highly valued modern Lincoln cents in circulation. Confirmed genuine examples of this variety have sold for well into the tens of thousands of dollars, with some specialist price guides listing values north of $15,000 in high grades, and the most pristine examples can command even higher premiums in advanced collector markets. Identifying a genuine 1982 small date copper penny is challenging. The most reliable method is to weigh the coin. A genuine copper planchet variant will weigh roughly 3.11 grams, whereas zinc pennies weigh about 2.5 grams. Additionally, the date style must correspond to the small date variety. Subtle differences in numeral size and spacing distinguish it from the more common large date types. Because authentic examples are so rare, professional authentication and grading services are typically used to verify claims. Aside from this extraordinarily rare transitional error, other 1982 varieties and errors also have value above face. Pennies with the small date variety in copper from Philadelphia are uncommon relative to the large date Philadelphia issues, and can be worth more, sometimes several dollars or even more, in high uncirculated condition because they are less common and sought after by collectors completing variety sets. Zinc small date pennies are less rare but still collected, often valued modestly above common examples. Mint errors such as off-center strikes where the design is misaligned on the planchet, double die errors where the die-struck design elements appear doubled because of misalignment during die creation, and clipped planchet errors where part of the blank was improperly cut before striking, can also increase a 1982 penny's worth, sometimes into the tens or low hundreds of dollars depending on severity and condition. Such errors, while not nearly as rare as the small date bronze variety, are still far less common than ordinary circulation coins and therefore attract collector premiums. Collecting and valuing 1982 pennies involves careful observation and attention to detail. Because so many varieties exist, collectors often use tools like digital scales, magnification, reference guides, and comparison to known examples. A single date on the obverse carries crucial identification clues, including the size of the numerals and how they relate to surrounding lettering and design elements. Combining visual inspection with weight testing helps distinguish between copper and zinc planchets and between large and small date varieties. The story of the 1982 Lincoln penny reflects both the mundane reality of everyday currency, billions of coins used for small change, and the extraordinary possibilities that emerge when production is in flux. In a year when penny composition changed dramatically, the overlapping phases of production generated multiple varieties that are collectible precisely because they illustrate a moment when the minting process was not uniform. That complexity is part of what has made 1982 one of the most studied and debated years among Lincoln cent enthusiasts. Because most 1982 pennies are still worth their face value of 1 cent when used in commerce, the real value proposition lies in condition, variety type, and the presence of rare errors. Everyday circulating pieces traded at face still serve their original purpose as currency. Collectors interested in completing all the varieties, large date and small date, copper and zinc, Philadelphia and Denver, may pay modest premiums for specific types, especially in higher grades. Moderate premiums also exist for error coins that exhibit off-center strikes, doubled dies, and clipped planchets, particularly in uncirculated condition. Yet, imagine picking up an ordinary copper-colored coin from your pocket and suddenly realizing that this little piece of metal could be worth far more than its face value that this humble Liberty 1 cent 1984 Lincoln penny from the United States contains within its worn surfaces, stories and secrets and possibilities that make collectors and enthusiasts around the world excited to hunt for examples that carry errors, minting mistakes, or unusual characteristics that transform a simple coin into a prized collectible. What seems like pocket change can sometimes be a window into history and the inner workings of the United States Mint, and a potential treasure for those who know what to look for. The tale of the 1984 Lincoln penny is both a deeply American story and a testament to the power of curiosity and observation. The 1-cent piece, also known as the penny, has been part of everyday life in the United States for centuries, used to pay exact change purchased goods and passed from hand to hand in transactions large and small. Most people think of pennies as almost worthless relics of everyday commerce, yet for collectors a single penny, especially one with unusual characteristics, can be worth far more than 1 cent. In particular, the 1984 D. Lincoln penny struck at the Denver Mint carries with it a rich history and has become the subject of interest for numismatists because of certain striking errors, mint mark anomalies, and unexpected variations that set select pieces apart and make them valuable beyond their face value. The story of the Lincoln penny begins long before 1984. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth and marked the first widely circulated American coin to feature a real historical figure. Designed by Victor David Brenner, it replaced the symbolic imagery that had historically graced lower denomination United States coins with the powerful and enduring image of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the nation. The decision to immortalize Lincoln on the penny was rooted in a national desire to honor his legacy as the leader who preserved the Union and championed liberty during one of the most tumultuous periods in American history. Brenner's design was embraced by the public and has endured with only modest modifications for more than a century, making Lincoln pennies among the most collected coins in American numismatics. The 1984 D. Lincoln penny is part of this long lineage of Lincoln cents. In 1984, the United States Mint produced vast quantities of pennies to meet the needs of commerce. These coins were struck at various facilities, including the Philadelphia Mint, which produced coins without a mint mark, and the Denver Mint, whose coins carry the letter D indicating their place of origin. The 1984 D penny bears the D mint mark on the obverse just below the date, signifying it was struck in Denver. Like most Lincoln pennies of its era, the coin features Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had been in place since 1959 and continued until 2008. To the casual observer, the 1984 D. Lincoln penny appears ordinary, yet among the millions produced that year, a small number were born with differences, deviations, and imperfections that have drawn the attention of coin collectors and continue to drive interest and value in the modern market. At its core, the appeal of the 1984 D. Lincoln penny to collectors stems from the broad fact that coins are not always produced perfectly. The minting process is complex and involves hundreds of individual steps, from preparing planchets or blanks to feeding them into striking presses that imprint the design with tremendous force. While most coins are struck cleanly and correctly, some coins escape the process with unusual features or mistakes that occur because of worn dies, misalignment, foreign material interference, or unexpected mechanical issues. These are collectively known as mint errors and varieties, and they can range from dramatic and obvious to subtle and intriguing. When such errors are present on a coin and verified by collectors and grading services, they can raise its value significantly above face value because of scarcity, collector demand, and the story inherent in the imperfection. To understand why certain 1984 D pennies can be valuable, it is important to understand the basics of how coins are made. The process begins with metal blanks of precise composition and weight. By 1984, pennies were made with a core of predominantly zinc and plated with a thin layer of copper to give them their familiar copper appearance. These blanks are fed into coining presses where specially prepared dies strike them with immense pressure, transferring the design details onto both sides of the coin. One die carries the design for the obverse, typically Lincoln's profile and date and mint mark, while the opposite die carries the reverse design, the Lincoln Memorial and other inscriptions. For normal production, the dies are expected to be aligned properly and in good condition, producing crisp and uniform coins. However, as these dies are used, they wear down and can develop cracks or other imperfections. Additionally, if a planchet is not properly centered or fed into the press at the exact right position, or if the mint mark punch is misaligned or struck multiple times, coins with unusual features can result. Each type of error has its own characteristics and collector interest, with some being more sought after and valuable than others. These error types include off-center strikes, double strikes, repunched mint marks, die cracks, die chips, clipped planchets, broad strikes, misaligned dies, and more. Each category tells a story about what happened during the striking process that caused the coin to deviate from its intended appearance. One of the most commonly recognized errors among collectors looking at Lincoln pennies is the off-center strike. In an off-center strike, the planchet is not properly centered between the dies when struck. As a result, part of the intended design is missing, creating a coin that appears incomplete with blank areas where design details should be. The degree of off-centering can vary widely, and coins with only minor off-centering may have little collector value because they are difficult to notice and often look just like worn coins. But coins that are significantly off-center with missing design elements, especially where the date or mint mark is still visible, can be highly sought after. A 1984 D Lincoln penny that is substantially off-center with clear missing design and a fully visible date can be worth many times its face value to the right collector. The rarity of significant off-center strikes combined with their visual appeal and the joy of owning something unique underpins their value. At its core, the appeal of the 1984 D Lincoln penny to collectors stems from the broad fact that coins are not always produced perfectly. The minting process is complex and involves hundreds of individual steps, from preparing planchets or blanks to feeding them into striking presses that imprint the design with tremendous force. While most coins are struck cleanly and correctly, some coins escape the process with unusual features or mistakes that occur because of worn dies, misalignment, foreign material interference, or unexpected mechanical issues. These are collectively known as mint errors and varieties, and they can range from dramatic and obvious to subtle and intriguing. When such errors are present on a coin and verified by collectors and grading services, they can raise its value significantly above face value because of scarcity, collector demand, and the story inherent in the imperfection. To understand why certain 1984 D pennies can be valuable, it is important to understand the basics of how coins are made. The process begins with metal blanks of precise composition and weight. By 1984, pennies were made with a core of predominantly zinc and plated with a thin layer of copper to give them their familiar copper appearance. These blanks are fed into coining presses where specially prepared dies strike them with immense pressure, transferring the design details onto both sides of the coin. One die carries the design for the obverse, typically Lincoln's profile and date and mint mark, while the opposite die carries the reverse design, the Lincoln Memorial and other inscriptions. For normal production, the dies are expected to be aligned properly and in good condition, producing crisp and uniform coins. However, as these dies are used, they wear down and can develop cracks or other imperfections. Additionally, if a planchet is not properly centered or fed into the press at the exact right position, or if the mint mark punch is misaligned or struck multiple times, coins with unusual features can result. Each type of error has its own characteristics and collector interest, with some being more sought after and valuable than others. These error types include off-center strikes, double strikes, repunched mint marks, die cracks, die chips, clipped planchets, broad strikes, misaligned dies, and more. Each category tells a story about what happened during the striking process that caused the coin to deviate from its intended appearance. One of the most commonly recognized errors among collectors looking at Lincoln pennies is the off-center strike. In an off-center strike, the planchet is not properly centered between the dies when struck. As a result, part of the intended design is missing, creating a coin that appears incomplete with blank areas where design details should be. The degree of off-centering can vary widely, and coins with only minor off-centering may have little collector value because they are difficult to notice and often look just like worn coins. But coins that are significantly off-center with missing design elements, especially where the date or mint mark is still visible, can be highly sought after. A 1984 D Lincoln penny that is substantially off-center with clear missing design and a fully visible date can be worth many times its face value to the right collector. The rarity of significant off-center strikes combined with their visual appeal and the joy of owning something unique underpins their value. Another fascinating type of error involves double strikes and multiple strikes. Under normal circumstances, a coin blank is struck once by the dies and ejected. But occasionally a blank may remain in the press or not fully seat and receive an additional strike, either in the same orientation or slightly rotated relative to the first impression. This results in doubling or ghosted images of design elements. In the case of a Lincoln penny, this might show as doubled lettering on Lincoln in God We Trust, or duplication of the date numbers or mint mark. When a double strike is obvious and dramatic, it creates a distinct and collectible variety. For the 1984 D Lincoln penny, a clear double strike that shows overlapping design elements with defined offset can be especially valuable to collectors because each example is unique and visually interesting and serves as a testament to the mechanical quirks of coin production. Mint mark anomalies are another area of great interest when talking about the 1984 D Lincoln penny. The D mint mark on a Denver struck coin is created by punching the letter into the die used to strike the coin. However, if this mint mark punch is misaligned, repunched, or struck more than once in slightly different positions, the resulting coins may bear what collectors call a repunched mint mark, or RPM. To the untrained eye, these variations might look like doubling or smearing of the mint mark area, but to experienced collectors, the specific pattern of multiple impressions can be identified and catalogued. A 1984 D penny with a clear repunched mint mark where the D is visibly doubled or has traces of a secondary impression can be more desirable than a standard mint mark coin. The more obvious and defined the error, the greater the interest and the higher the premium that collectors may pay. Die cracks and die chips are indicative of wear and tear on the dies themselves. As a die ages and experiences the stress of striking thousands or millions of coins, it can develop hairline cracks. These cracks appear as raised lines on the struck coins where the metal filled the fractured die surface. Some die cracks are minor while others are very dramatic and can cross major design elements such as Lincoln's profile or the lettering on the coin. When a series of die cracks create a visually interesting pattern, collectors may seek out such coins even if the error does not drastically alter the overall appearance. Similarly, die chips where chunks of the die break off can create raised blobs or unusual shapes on the coin's surface, which again become points of interest for collectors. Clipped planchets are another type of mint error that occasionally appear among Lincoln pennies. These occur when the planchet blank was not fully punched from the metal strip or when a previously punched blank was somehow fed into the press with a missing section. The result is a coin with a curved clipped portion missing from its edge. If the clip is substantial and the coin is otherwise in good condition, this error can be collectible because it is an unmistakable deviation from normal production. Broad strikes and misalignment errors occur when the collar that holds the coin blank to the standard diameter during striking is missing or malfunctioning. In such cases, the planchet can expand beyond its normal boundaries, resulting in a broader coin with design elements that may appear stretched toward the edges. These are intriguing to collectors because they represent a significant departure from the normal shape and size of the coin. Another category that sometimes arises with Lincoln pennies is known as die rotation errors. This occurs when the dies themselves are not perfectly aligned with each other in terms of rotation. As a result, when the coin is struck, the obverse and reverse designs may not line up properly when the coin is flipped from one side to the other. For example, the Lincoln Memorial may appear upright when the obverse is rotated at an odd angle. These rotational discrepancies are subtle yet can be detected by knowledgeable collectors and can add value to the coin. Value in the coin collecting world is a function of scarcity, condition, demand, and the specific nature of the error or variety. A standard circulated 1984 D Lincoln penny without any noticeable errors is generally worth around its face value 1 cent or slightly more to a collector who is assembling a date and mint mark set. Most circulated examples in everyday change are common and carry little premium because so many were produced and so many survive in typical condition from years of use in commerce. However, the moment a coin carries a recognizable and catalogued error such as significant off-center strike, dramatic doubling, or repunched mint mark, and especially if it is preserved in higher quality condition, its market value can rise substantially. For example, a 1984 D Lincoln penny with a notable off-center strike showing more than a small minor displacement of the design can fetch tens or even hundreds of dollars depending on degree and visibility. Highly dramatic off-center examples that retain the date and mint mark clearly can be particularly valuable because collectors prioritize the ability to identify the coin's issue combined with a striking visual error. Coins with double strikes that produce distinct overlapping design elements similarly can fetch collectible prices. Mild doubling that is hard to notice may not command a premium, but bold double strikes that create a ghosted image or secondary impression can make the coin stand out and appeal to collectors who specialize in error coins. The value for these can range from a few dollars to well over $100 or more for the most striking examples given their uniqueness and aesthetic appeal. Mint mark anomalies on the 1984 D such as repunched mint marks also create collector interest. A coin with a clear RPM where the D appears doubled or shows evidence of multiple mint mark impressions can be more desirable than a standard mint mark coin. Depending on the visibility and aesthetic of the error, such coins may trade in the range of tens to low hundreds of dollars. Coins with particularly dramatic or rare mint mark placements or multiple punches can sometimes exceed typical price expectations, especially if verified by a professional grading service. Die cracks and die chips, though often less valuable than major off-center or multiple strike errors, still hold value for collectors interested in die variety series. A 1984 D Lincoln penny with prominent die cracks that cross major design elements may be worth a premium above face even if not reaching the high prices of dramatic off-center strikes. These may sell for a handful of dollars to tens of dollars based on collector interest. Similarly, clipped planchets with noticeable missing sections can be worthwhile additions to an error coin collection and often trade at prices that reflect the degree of clipping and overall condition. Broad strike errors and die rotation discrepancies can also add value, particularly when the effect is obvious without magnification and when the coin remains free of severe wear. These error types appeal to modern collectors seeking interesting variations and often find homes at prices above standard circulated examples. Condition plays a crucial role across all categories. A coin with a notable error in poor condition with heavy scratches and corrosion may not command nearly as high a price as a similar error coin that is well preserved with clear surfaces and original color. Uncirculated error coins that have escaped the wear of daily commerce often fetch significantly more because they combine the rarity of the error with the desirability of pristine condition. Coins that have been professionally graded by renowned third-party grading services like PCGS and NGC usually bring even higher prices because buyers have confidence in the accuracy of the error identification and the assigned condition grade. The collecting community continually studies and documents known errors and varieties for each issue year of the Lincoln Penny, including the 1984 D examples. New discoveries sometimes emerge as collectors examine large quantities of coins dug from circulation rolls and share findings with others in forums, clubs, and publications. As additional examples of known varieties become known, the market may adjust valuations accordingly, but truly rare and dramatic errors tend to hold their appeal and value over time. The 1984 D Lincoln Penny also holds a place in popular culture as a reminder that even ordinary objects can bear unexpected stories and value. Many collectors enjoy the pursuit of finding error coins in pocket change, the thrill of the hunt and the satisfaction of uncovering something that at first glance seemed mundane but upon closer inspection reveals itself to be quite remarkable. This makes the 1984 D Lincoln Penny not just an object of monetary value but a symbol of discovery, a reminder that history and intrigue can be hidden in the most everyday items. It is important for anyone curious about the potential value of their 1984 D Lincoln pennies to educate themselves about what constitutes a true mint error as opposed to damage caused by circulation wear, environmental factors, or cleaning. True mint errors occur during the production process and have specific characteristics that differentiate them from post-circulation damage. Consulting reliable references, engaging with experienced collectors, engaging third-party grading, and using proper magnification too.